Hello and welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us in this Nutrition Nectar program on processed foods. Are they all bad? And today I have Mrs. Neelanjana Singh with me. If you have any questions, please type them as always in the chat box. Let me share my disclaimer slide quickly and then we will start with the introduction. Give me a moment, please. Yeah, can you see the disclaimer slide? I suppose you can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so the views expressed in this program are for information only. Kindly seek a physician's help if you have a medical problem. And please, oh, okay. Please consult a qualified dietitian for personalized diet plans. I think that slide was a bit slow in going to the PowerPoint mode, so it kind of went off in between, but there you have it again. Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to introduce to you Mrs. Neelanjana Singh. Please give me a moment. For some reason, the PowerPoint closed. So I have her introduction with me. And meanwhile, Neelanjana, it's wonderful to have you with us. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on my show and share your knowledge about processed foods and if they're bad, if they're good, can they be eaten, can they not be eaten. In fact, when I read your article in Indian Express, right? Was it Indian Express or?
This was my website, the Substack article. Yes.
Okay, yeah, right. So when I read that article on processed foods, I was so impressed, and I said, okay, so this is the right person to talk about processed foods and nutrition nectar.
Thank you. It's actually a big privilege for me to be here with you and you hosting the program. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, pleasure is all mine. All right, so let me introduce Neelanjana to all of you. A lot of you, I think, are already familiar with Neelanjana. She has over 30 years of experience in the field of nutrition and dietetics. She created and headed nutrition facility at PSRI Hospital for Liver, Renal, and Digestive Diseases, and this is in New Delhi. She taught nutrition and health education at Delhi University for over 7 years. She's been a health columnist for the Indian Express and the Morning Standard. She's the author of Our Kid Eats Everything and Why Should I Eat Healthy? Very interesting titles. She has conducted workshops on wellness for various institutions, including corporates and schools. She is on the advisory board of websites on health and nutrition, and her weekly newsletter is published at dietmatters.substack.com. All right, that's very interesting, and I look forward to reading more of your articles, Neelanjana, and I'm sure people will find it very useful. So, shall we begin the session today?
Look forward to
thank you.
More from you.
Before thank you. And before we start, I'm going to say a quick hello to Dharani Krishnan. She's the first person to log in and wish us good luck for the session. So she says, good luck for the session, Sheela and Neelanjana, a dear friend of both of us. So we are both very happy
that that you are going to be here on the program. So again, absolutely. A privilege for me.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Dharani. And we all know you very well, so thanks for being here. I'm going to start off with the first question. Neelanjana, what do processed foods mean exactly? Are they foods that we use every day, or is it something special?
Yeah, thank you for posing that question, because I think it just opens up a big box of more questions that are going to come. And if it's okay, can I share my slides?
Yes, please.
Just to put it on the presentation. So most of the time what is happening now is processed foods are being vilified. And this is a good time to also talk about why processing is not really so bad. It is something that we all need, and we need it to process the agricultural produce that we get, and we cannot eat it straight away most of the times. Some things we may be able to, but we need that processing to make it edible for us. And this confusing term does not allow it to for people to understand that it's not a bad word. Processing is not a bad word. So because of that confusion, we also need to understand that unless we have processing, we cannot feed this large population that is growing in the world today, unless we process foods and make it available at different times and for disasters. So processing is important for preservation, for safety of food. So it's not a bad word. We may not realize, but we are having some kind of processing, even though we may think that these foods are not processed, like milk is pasteurized, the peas may come out of a packet which is frozen. So this peas packet is just frozen peas without any additives. So again, there is processing that happens, puts it into the packet. The atta that we eat again is processed because it's ground. So all of this is happening, and we are eating processed food. But processing is a very, very diverse thing. So we need to understand what processing is all about. That is what I think firstly we should understand, that it's not all bad.
That's such a relief to hear, because I think almost everybody has uh, kind of bad-mouthed processed foods in recent times. Processed foods have received a lot of flack, and why do you think that processed foods are in the dock?
So again, like I say, not all processed foods are in the dock. It is a certain kind of processed foods that seem to have a very strong correlation with ill health. And these are the ultra processed foods. So there initially there seemed to be some link that people who were eating such foods were actually falling ill more often, they were more prone to diabetes. But from say last 2 decades, the scientific evidence that has come in is confirming that these foods, the ultra processed foods, are actually the cause for increased diabetes, certain types of cancers, even mental health problems like depression. So there are a whole range of problems that have been linked to the consumption of ultra processed foods. And just a 10%, this was a study done in 2018 in France. And what they noticed that just a 10% increase in the diet of ultra processed food increased the risk of diabetes by 10%. So that is how strong the evidence is. Of course, there are more studies, like in 2019, there was a study, RCT. RCTs are not very easy to do, but the group that was eating ultra processed food actually gained about 1 kg in just 2 weeks. They ate more than 500 calories per day. So there is a very strong evidence that whole range of problems can occur if you increase your intake of ultra processed foods.
Okay, that's kind of scary, I think, but it's also it also tells us that we really need to be careful of ultra processed foods. So what you're saying is there are several kinds of processed foods, and there's something called the NOVA system, right? So if you can elaborate on that, that would be really nice.
Yes, this is a new system of classifying foods, just the processed foods, because of the confusion. This was designed by Brazilian scientists because when they noticed how the obesogenic environment was changing from their children, from slim to obese children, they thought of this classification, because unless you know, how will you tell people to be wary of it? If you just say that avoid processed food, if you tell me that, I'm going to be confused. So I'm sure everybody will be. So you don't know what is okay and what is not. So the NOVA classification tried to do this, and NOVA means new star. So these are all new foods which have come in the last 2 decades, and they wanted to classify and tell people. So they grouped in 4 categories. These are the 4 categories you can see on the screen. The group 1 are the unprocessed foods or the minimally processed foods. So these are parts of plants, any part of the plant that you eat, or the animal, like the meat that you eat, or the eggs or the milk. These are the unprocessed foods. And the minimally processed foods also come in group 1. And these are altered by certain processes, but they still remain in group 1 because you're removing certain inedible parts which you could not have eaten by certain processes, which could be grinding, crushing, or anything that is required to remove that part and to preserve that food. So it could be made suitable for storage, keeping it safe and making it pleasant to consume. But they don't have added ingredients to them. So it is just removing those parts, making it safe, making it edible, and making it pleasant to consume, but no added ingredients. So you do all the cooking at home, you prepare it at home in the kitchen or in a restaurant, or any place where you can combine with other ingredients to make it more palatable. So this is group 1. Then group 2 is the culinary ingredients. So these are also from natural foods like oil, butter, sugar, vinegar, spices, which are natural foods, but they are added to the group 1 foods, which are the minimally processed or parts of plants and animals. And these are added to the foods to make it more palatable, to season it, to make it more interesting and enjoyable, because eating food that's enjoyable is very important. So it's not that we should have bland diets and say that, no, okay, I'm enjoying my food. So that's not possible. So let's face it, we want to make food enjoyable, and these are culinary ingredients which are added to group 1 to make it more palatable and enjoyable. The group 3 are the processed food. And here, processing is done to increase the durability for whatever reason, because we want to sort of transport it to other places, or whatever the reason, the durability is increased. And also the taste factor is improved. So you combine ingredients from 1 and 2 and make it more palatable, but you can still recognize them. Okay, this atta or this grain came from group 1, you added the spices, you added the oil, and you can still recognize them as natural foods. So this is group 3, which is processed. You use a process, but it's still recognizable. So you add salt, oil, sugar. So it is not that these things are banned. We talk about high fat, high sugar, and high salt food. So it's not that we are talking about adding them in high quantities, but we need to add some amounts of these to make it tasty. And just like when you have a vegetable, you want to keep it for a longer time, you can bottle it or freeze it or put it in a syrup, whatever it is, some process, and you preserve or you cook it, and that is group 3. Now coming to the group 4, which are the ultra processed foods. And these contain ingredients which you would normally not see in your kitchen. You will not see even in a restaurant kitchen, or any place where even food is cooked for a large audience. It's not available in any of the kitchens. So these are ingredients like preservatives, antioxidants, stabilizers, and they are found only in this category of foods. And oil, sugars, and fats are not banned. I mean, they are there. But in addition, there are other sources of energy like maltodextrins, casein, lactose. And whenever you pick up these packets, you will notice that these are all there in ultra-processed foods. There'll also be colors, there'll be flavor enhancers, there will be artificial sweeteners, because you need to disguise and enhance the taste of the final product. There's so many things going in which may not be palatable in to when the final product is there. So you need to disguise it, color it, do all those things. In fact, there's a very nice name given to these foods. They are called cosmetic foods. They look so good that they are called cosmetic foods. And in fact, a US food writer, Michael Pollan, he calls it edible food-like substances. Then they look, I mean, they look good, food-like. They are not foods anymore. So that's what he calls it. And there are many processes that go on to make these foods. And you can see the names right from extrusion, firming, carbonation, and you would not do any such thing in a kitchen. So that is the difference. And these are the ultra-processed foods. So what is the difference between this classification and other classifications which we do for food? We as dietitians have always been classifying foods according to the nutrients present in it, the kind of the composition that it has. So we have different kinds of classifications, but here it is the degree of processing that the food undergoes, and this classification is based on that. And many of the reformulated foods, which may otherwise be also sort of put out in the market as healthy foods because you have added some vitamins or minerals to it to enrich it, they still fall in category 4. They might be still called healthy from the marketing perspective, but they are in category 4 and they will remain in the ultra processed group. So just to sum up, this is something that I thought of 5 ways that you can sort of categorize and know whether you're eating an ultra processed food, because it's important to know it quickly. You can't sort of sit back, look at a packet and think, now, can I eat this? Is this bad for me or is this good for me? So very quickly, if it has a long list of ingredients, you look at the long list and you should be wary. Then you look at ingredients which you would otherwise not find in the kitchen, all industrial kind of names. These names itself for the common person, it will be scary. So emulsifiers, and of course, high fat, high sugar, these are things one has to be wary of. But combined with that, if you have emulsifiers also there, you need to be wary. And then if you have a long list of preservatives also there, they might call it fresh food because initially they might start with fresh, but when you have all those preservatives and it is aggressively marketed, branding and very colorful packets, etc., then you can be sure that this is ultra processed. So these were the 4 categories and 5 ways to recognize it.
Okay, that is very, very informative, Neelanjana. Thank you so much for beautifully explaining the NOVA system. So is this NOVA system followed across the world, or is it only in some countries?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, because just a few months ago, I saw the names of certain pediatricians writing to, I don't know, was it the health ministry? I'm not very sure, making a plea that India should also adopt it, because FSSA had proposed a system, a traffic light system for classifying foods as healthy or not so healthy and bad. But that was a draft regulation which did not get adopted. So they were making a plea that we should also adopt it because this is a good classification. And we are right now, we are at a stage where we can change our eating habits. We are not really there. So they were making a plea that we should adopt it, and it's not yet adopted in India. But as dietitians, I think we are free to use it to make it.
Right. Yeah, I guess these are more in developed countries. The NOVA system is followed probably more in
Brazil and certain, yes, they're also using it because I think they're very conscious of the stark changes that have come about in their population. So especially young children. I think in 10 years, they've more than doubled their obesity rates. And India also, the data that has come in, even in Ladakh, children are turning obese. I would think that Ladakh is probably a place where
Yes,
you won't get these ultra processed foods, but
right.
it's everywhere
Yeah,
now.
yeah. That this was really very well answered. Thank you so much. And in fact, you're already getting good compliments for explaining this so beautifully. Madhu Sharma, great to see you here again. I missed you in the last few episodes. She says hi, Nilanjana and Sheila. Great to be back. Thank you for joining. Ipsita Chakravarti, thank you so much for joining in. And Ipsita says nice presentation, Nilanjana. So there you go.
Thank you,
Madhu.
Madhu and Sita.
Yeah, Madhu Sharma also says great presentation, Neelanjana. So compliments are already pouring in. Thank you so much to all of you for joining in. Let's move on to the next question. Are they okay? Sorry, we did the nervous system already. When people refer to processed foods, do you think they mean the ultra processed variety, or is it like a blanket term which is used for everything that comes from a store? Because I don't think people generally have understood this categorization of processed foods.
Yeah, actually, Sheila, that's right. And it took a while for me to also understand that. And what I noticed when I was reading about the system, that in fact, some French volunteers some years ago, they were so confused. They thought, let's set up a website, and it's called, I think, Food Facts. Open Food Facts. That's what the website is called. And they sort of put all these foods there and try to classify it into this system where which food fits in. And now I saw this website yesterday. They have already sort of tracked 1 million foods, and they said that it was difficult to classify initially, but they were able to do it. And I think even as a dietitian, it is not so easy. So right now we tell people don't have processed food. And I think
Right.
we should be more careful about telling them and more precise, because
Yes.
we have to eat processed food. We just need to be more careful about avoiding ultra processed food.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this out. So, is it fair to say that the more number of additives in a food packet, the more likely it is going to harm the consumer's health? I think you kind of mentioned this already, but
I want to show this slide. I
okay.
want I want to show this slide because additives, like it could be spices, it could be oil, so that is fine if you want to add a little oil or spices. But when there are ingredients or additives, like I have put on the screen some names, these are not needed for our nutrition. These are needed to make that product look good or stay in that form, to reformulate it, because these formulations, if you look at a packet of any of these savory snacks, if you just look at them, will you be able to tell whether the starting point was wheat or oats, or was it a dal that start, what was the start? I'm sure none of us could do that, because there's so many of these ingredients that go into that packet. So if you find these ingredients added to your food, you definitely would not want them, and they could be a health risk, which has been sort of seen in scientific studies as well. So avoid avoid as much of these as possible, because you can do without them.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, well, as you said right from the beginning, these do not provide any nutrition anyway. Uh,
Can I just see if I have maybe a slide or so to show where these are listed
Absolutely.
on the ingredient list? Let me see if I have put a slide. Yeah, I have
Yes.
a slide.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah, I looked at the packet of bread that you get from the market, which is industrially produced. I'm not talking about bread that you make in your bread maker, which is just a mixture of any of the grains, the ground grains, some oil or butter or some salt, sugar added to it. So you can see the emulsifiers. Emulsifiers, definitely it strikes bad chord, because it is just blending things which would otherwise not blend. So acidity regulator, antioxidant. So even industrially produced bread is something. And Indians, I think we used to have chapatis or flat bread in our breakfast many years ago, which we do not have the time to make it. But bread makers make it easier for us to prepare bread. And so I don't know how many of us can do it, but it's better to have it if possible.
Okay. Wow. So that goes out the window. Do you have another example, or shall we move to the next question?
So I just want to
Okay.
say that the same food, like I've made 3 examples, that whether it's wheat flour, water, salt, yeast, and you make bread, and that is at the most it comes in category 3. It can be processed because you're cooking it and you're adding all these things, you're adding the culinary ingredients, but you add emulsifiers like I showed you in that packet, coloring, and it becomes ultra processed. Similarly, you have plain oats, that's fine, but you add all those things, the color and the flavors, and it becomes ultra processed. Similarly for yogurt, you have plain yogurt, that's perfect, but many of these flavored yogurts have so many things added. So next time you have a flavored yogurt, check on the packet, and what you can do is add your own flavors rather than buying it from a store which is already been flavored for you.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question then. So I think what you have been trying to say is processing removes nutrients which are otherwise present in the natural state of foods, right? So is there a way to compromise on the nutrient loss, or I mean,
Yes, it's totally possible to do that, and I think the food industry is very cognizant of that. So when you process foods, we know that most of the time potassium goes out and the sodium content increases. So we know that there are changes in the food, and the food industry, because it can do so many things to the food, it does add back, sometimes fortifies foods, and it may seem like it's become really as healthy as the natural food. But at this point, I'd like to remind everyone listening in that we have been saying that get your nutrients from food and not from supplements. So as much as possible, don't look for these fortified foods. If you can get it right from the food itself, it's much better, because we know that the body doesn't process these supplements or these fortified nutrients, the synthetic ones, as the natural ones. So that should be our goal, to get it from the natural.
okay, wonderful. But in spite of saying all of this, most people find ultra processed foods very, very tempting. So how often would you recommend a person, to consume such foods?
Yeah, that's a very, very, very tricky question. It's really a balancing act that one has to do.
Yeah.
Let me see if this is another slide which I wanted to show how food from category 1, group 1 goes into category 4, that is the ultra processed foods. So you have milk, which is pasteurized, it comes into your home. Then there is artisanal cheese that you can make, and then these are the cheese balls that you get in a packet, which looks so attractive. You just want to dig into it. So just wanted to show, because I like these pictures, I wanted to share it with you, how the processing changes. And when you look at these cheese balls, would you ever think that is the first source, the milk and the cheese, and there's so much added to it, it totally changes it.
Right.
So I just want to tell you that more and more of our diets are being taken over by these ultra processed foods, because there is virtue in it. They are so convenient. They are safe. They are totally microbiologically safe. They have a long shelf life. So you don't have to worry, okay, is that in my fridge? Do I still have it? Do I need to? So it's there sitting on your shelf. So you're worryless. So this is the big advantage of ultra processed foods. And some of the commonly eaten ones in our country, I thought it's better to talk about the Western countries. There's a much longer list that goes, but these are the things that breakfast cereals, the breads, and many of the sodas, and reconstituted meat products like ham, salami, and many of the frozen dishes. When I talk about pre-prepared frozen dishes, these are different from the frozen peas or the vegetables that we get at some of the outlets where it's just the vegetable frozen. So this is pre-prepared. So there's a distinction. So these are the commonly eaten ultra processed foods and they're convenient. So we tend to have it in our home. But like I said in my early part of the talk, that even a 10% increase can cause health problems. So the idea is uh, wherever you can, wherever you have the time to pre-prepare and make some changes in your daily routine to sort of get in more of the fresh foods or category 3 foods, not the 4. Don't reach the 4 category. So if you can do that, so instead of flavored yogurt, like I mentioned, just go for the plain yogurt. You can add a flavor of your choice which is available at home, so do that. So in that case you will sort of cut it down. I'm not saying that you remove it totally, because that will not sustain. It's not going to sustain. So instead of that, just remove wherever you have the time to prepare more from the naturally occurring ingredients. So this is part of our everyday. Most homes, I would say, some part of it is there in metro cities, at least, where people are working and they don't have the time to cook. Another snack which just wanted to show you, that a snack that kids love. And when you look at the long list of ingredients, remember the 5 things that I said. The first thing was the long list of ingredients. You can see the artificial colors itself. There are 3-4 kinds of colors. There is, of course, all the flavoring that is added, and then of course the chemicals that are put together. So as little as possible, everybody has to take their own call and see how much they can reduce.
Yeah, that's the, I think that's the issue, right? Because when we say as little as possible, it becomes very difficult for people to minimize the ultra processed foods, because they're so much a part of our lives now, I think. So, well, I guess we have to be careful. And if ultra processed foods carry a label like a natural or organic, uh, could they be considered healthy?
That's an interesting question, Sheila. The sad part is that they cannot be called healthy. They might be fortified, they may have certain natural ingredients added to it, but they are reformulated. So they have been reformulated. So if there is an Oreo or a biscuit or a snack, you cannot put it back into the previous form. So they've already gone through those chemical processes where it has turned. And I like to give this example that when a potato, you take a potato which has been organically grown and totally otherwise healthy, and you make it into a snack which is ultra processed, it cannot be called healthy just because it was grown organically. I think that cannot be a point for making it healthy. Not anymore.
Okay, before I go to the last question for today, let me just read out a few things that has come in the chat box. Susan Verghese, thank you for joining, Susan. She says, very informative. Okay, you have a question, but I'll come to the question later. Dharani Krishnan says, salty foods when processed have sugar or sugar-free. So the consumer should be warned on this. An example will be chips itself. Uh, yeah, I think Neelanjana just mentioned about the potato turning into chips, and yeah. And Dharani also says, excellent dialogue. Thank you, Dharani, for the compliment. Ipsita Chakravarti says, common people should develop reading food labels before purchasing anything. That's so true. And I think as dietitians, we have always been saying read food labels, but I don't know. Do you know, Neelanjana, how many people would actually they would probably read labels, but do they really understand? Do you know if people really understand what the food label is trying to tell us?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because there is a whole lot of things to read. That is
Right.
why, in fact, FSSAI thought about the traffic light system, where they thought that people are not reading labels, so they just have to see whether it's green, amber, or red, and just look at that. People don't want to read that much. I think people in general don't want to read. And especially when you're at a store, I mean, you're just rushing in, rushing out, trying to pick up whatever you need. So people don't read labels, but you can tell them simple things. That is why just looking, if you look at a label like what I have on the screen, this is definitely telling you that you don't need this. You can put it back on the shelf. So it has to be a simple system. People are not reading, and I think educating them is very important, but maybe give them very simple tips so that they are able to pick up and just decide that, okay, should I take this or should I not?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So you have written books, and one of which has, I think, almost 100 healthy recipes for daily use. Uh, would you please share one or two of your favorite recipes with the viewers? And
Yeah.
also maybe mention the name of the book. That would be nice. Maybe if anybody is interested in purchasing.
Okay. Yes, I think I've made it my passion to try and tell people what they can do and make it simple for them, because I think there's so much to deal with. So I just want to make life simpler for people, and that is why I'm trying to make uh, this writing, or the writing that I do, also simple so that people are able to understand. And I think I forgot to show this slide, that how ultra processed foods are actually replacing our meals. They are everywhere, and that is why your question is so relevant, that how little should we eat? We should not replace our meals with ultra processed foods. That's for sure. And occasional treat is all fine, and I think that we should not ban for children, but portion sizes are important. And that's why I thought I'll show this slide. And I've been writing about how we need to deal with this junk. We cannot throw it out of the window, but we need to sort of do things so that we are able to sort of neutralize the bad effects. So I've been writing about that, and this is the book that it doesn't have 100 recipes. I had given my publisher 100 recipes, but
Okay.
they said the book will become too big. So it has 75.
Okay.
75 recipes, and these are all recipes that have been tried out on little kids, and they seem to love, and they do have healthy ingredients, and they are balanced, and most of them are balanced nutritionally. And yeah, so I will just tell you a couple of them. Let me take out the book and have marked like a couple of them. There is a recipe. I also enjoyed giving names to these recipes, because for children, and lots of 8 to 10-year-old children have been also reading my book, and they said they loved it. So I tried to make it simple. This is called Power Puff Idlis, because, and I don't use any rice or any suji to make these idlis, and they have moong dal and urad dal and some hing and other spices. So this is one way to get the children to eat the dals without them even getting to know that they're eating the dals. And we love our carbs. So sometimes I think we need to eat the dals also in some kind of camouflage way. So this is one recipe which lots of kids do eat. Actually, all of them are some recipes which I love too. The kids love, so I've tried to put them all together in the book. Then, should I tell you any
Yes,
more?
yes. If you want to, why not? I'm sure the viewers would be interested.
Okay.
Maybe one more.
Yeah, just one more. I don't want to bore all of you with too many recipes. There's one called the chaat in a cone. So this is a papad rolled into a cone, and it has a filling of many of these beans, like the black-eyed beans, and it has some other chopped coriander and tomatoes and capsicum and little bit of imli to make it made into a chaat and filled into this cone. So this is another one which is popular, and I think, yeah, I'll stop at that.
I'm sure your recipes must be very interesting, and you're quite a wordsmith, Neelanjana. And it's so nice to hear that you've given different names to the recipes too. So that must make it more interesting for the readers.
I'm proud of those names. I don't even know how I came upon those names, but I was thinking like a kid, like what would kids like? I mean, so
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. I'm sure. I mean, you're pretty good at writing. All right. So, thank you so much for sharing such wonderful information about processed foods, about your books, about the recipes, and all of that. I'm sure the viewers enjoyed and learned something new. Let's move on to. There are some more comments, I think. Let's move on to the questions. So, Susan Verghese has a question. She says, "Are granola bars out?"
in fact, there is a recipe in my book where I make a granola bar. So, like I said, Susan, that if you add those 4, 5 ingredients to make that bar, that's fine. There's actually some food companies which are doing that, and they don't have a long shelf life. That is the disadvantage, because you're not adding all those industrial additives. So when you look at the label and you don't find those industrial additives, those granola bars are fine. So you can have them.
Okay. So, Susan, you don't have to really,
Throw them out.
yeah, you don't have to throw them out the window. You can still retain them, or if you have one of those ultra processed ones, just quickly finish them and then go move on to the healthier ones
Yes,
later,
there are
right?
lots of food companies which are actually now cognizant of that, and
Right.
they may not have that many profits because they are not long shelf life means more profit for them. So they are ready to sort of counter that and have a less shelf life, and they are doing that.
Right, right. Okay, Reema Rao, thank you so much for joining, Reema. Really nice to see you here. She says, great talk, Nilanjana, and a very interesting topic you've chosen. Glad to know so much new. I'm glad that Reema and I'm sure the other viewers also would have learned something new today. And thank you very much, Nilanjana. That's a great compliment to you.
Thank
Sheila
you.
Dange, thank you so much for joining in. My namesake. She says namaste, hi to all of you, and thank you so much for being here. Madhu says, very interesting recipes, Nilanjana. You seem to be a great cook. Yes, I'm sure.
Thank you, Madhu. But
Yeah.
first try some of my recipes, then you'll know whether I'm a good cook or not.
Yeah. So, if there are any other questions, please do write in the chat box quickly before we wind up. Nilanjana, would you like to say, would you like to add anything else as a concluding note to the viewers? And if there are any more questions that come up, we'll quickly take them before we say bye.
So all I want to say as a closing remark, let's not vilify processed food, and let's not tell our clients or our patients that don't eat processed foods, because often I found that people are getting this kind of comment from the dietitian that processed food allowed nahi hai. So this will just confuse people. So tell them what in the processed foods that they have to avoid, and tell them that it's okay to have processed food once in a while, and if they can sort of not make it a part of their daily routine, it would be ideal. So keep it for weekends or special days, then it's fine.
Great. That was a lovely remark. Thank you so much. And there are no more questions in the chat box. So I think we'll end here. Thank you so much to all the viewers for joining us this evening. And I hope you had a informative session. And Nilanjana, once again, thank you so much for being here, and excellent presentation. And thanks once again. And I hope you'll come back another time for my garden series, because I learned that you have a very good kitchen garden. So hopefully you'll come back for another session.
Uh,
All
It
right,
will
this is
be an
just what.
honor, Sheila, to come
Thank
back,
you.
and it has been a privilege to be here. But I don't know whether my kitchen garden is very good, but it's just that
Oh, that's
I
okay.
like it, so
I will
I'm
definitely
happy to
have you
share.
back for that. In fact, Ipsita is also in line for that because she
Oh,
has a kitchen garden too. So, well, all right,
thank
we'll take that up another day. There's somebody else who's just mentioned something. Okay, Swati Shrikanta. Hi, Swati. So nice to see you here. She says, brilliant. This is simply the need of the hour. That's a great compliment to
you.
you, Neelanjana. Thank you so
Thank you,
much for that,
Swati.
Swati. Yeah. All right. So we'll end here, friends, and see you at the next Nutrition Nectar session, most likely early April. And thank you once again for joining in. And bye bye, and have a good weekend.
Thank you, everybody, for being the wonderful audience. And thank you, Sheela.
My
Great to
pleasure.
have you host the show.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.